Nelson Sakaguchi, a bank executive from one of the largest banks in Brazil, received a life-changing call. On the other end of the line was the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and he wanted to grow the country by building a major airport, unlike the country had ever seen. The project would cost $242 million, and Nelson would be promised a $10 million commission for investing in the project. They meet in London, and Nelson shakes hands with the governor, deputy governor, and the director of aviation. They show him all of the business plans, details, and discuss the entire infrastructure. Nelson is completely convinced, and they shake hands and make a deal. A home run investment for Nelson. There was just one problem: it was all a lie. This is the insane story of how one of the smartest criminals in history sold a fake airport for $242 million. The man behind this insane story is Emmanuel Nwud. Now there is a bit of a mystery surrounding Emmanuel and his upbringing. But it's assumed that he was born anywhere between 1950 and 1955 in the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, and his aspirations were anything but modest. From a young age, Emmanuel wanted to be rich, and was driven by an insatiable desire to escape poverty and rise above the ordinary. He was extremely gifted and highly intelligent for his age, and it was in the electrifying world of finance that Emmanuel saw his ticket to prosperity. As a young adult, Emmanuel ventured into the world of banking, where he quickly gained a reputation for his sharp intellect and ability to navigate the complex world of finance. Through hard work, perseverance, and his charm and charisma, he climbed the corporate ladder and later became the director of the Union Bank of Nigeria. He was doing extremely well for himself. He no longer lived in poverty and he was the director of a reputable bank. But it wasn't enough. Emmanuel wanted more. The kind of money that could buy him loads of power and influence. And soon he would come up with a plan that would etch his name into the annals of financial history forever. In the early 1990s, Nigeria was undergoing a transformation. That the nation had recently declared Abuja as its new capital, a decision that would ignite a frenzy of economic development. Priority number one for the Nigerian government was large-scale infrastructure projects, with a primary focus on building a world-class international airport. Emmanuel saw this as the golden opportunity he had been waiting for, and he came up with a brilliant idea, one that would put him in the Hall of Fame of con men. He was going to sell a fake airport and trick investors out of millions, but Emmanuel wouldn't be able to pull this off all on his own. He would need a team, so he handpicked a group of 5 individuals, all highly skilled in the areas of finance and banking. Their deep knowledge of the financial sector, as well as their connections, would make it easier to pull off the heist of the century. The plan would involve each of them impersonating high-ranking officials. Once everyone was aware of their role and the details of the plan, it was time to execute. The team started by carefully sending detailed faxes to banks all over the world. These faxes contained an official letter, pretending to be from a top Nigerian official named Touristia William, who supposedly worked in the financial planning and budgeting department of the Nigerian Ministry of Aviation, an identity that was completely made up by the team. The letter announced Nigeria's intent to develop a major airport project in Abuja, a city experiencing rapid growth since being declared the new capital in 1991. After they sent all the faxes, They were waited patiently, eager to see if anyone would bite onto their bit of lies. Time passed and it seemed like no one was interested. When all of a sudden, they received a fax back from a man named Nelson Sakaguchi from Banco Noroeste, a major bank of Brazil. Nelson said he was extremely interested in the proposal and that his bank had been looking for new investment opportunities for quite some time. As Emmanuel read the fax, a smirk appeared across his face and the rest of the team. The plan was now in full effect. Emmanuel immediately called Nelson, but he couldn't just be himself. For the scam to work, he needed to represent someone of great power and authority, someone that could be trustworthy. So instead, he pretended to be the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Paul Oguma. Now this was before the rise of the internet, so you couldn't just look up what the actual governor looked like. So this was Emmanuel's perfect opportunity. After using his charm and charisma, Emmanuel convinced Nelson that the deal was completely legitimate. To maintain the illusion, Emmanuel told Nelson that the project had to be completely confidential, so they needed to meet somewhere that was outside of both Nigeria and Brazil. Nelson suggested that they meet in London. Emmanuel agreed, and meticulous planning began. The team thoroughly prepared for the meeting, with each member assuming the identity of a high-ranking official. Emmanuel was the governor, with other members impersonating the deputy governor and the director of aviation. Their presentation would include detailed airport plans, a well-thought-out business proposal, and even fake documents to support all of their claims. After everything was fully prepared, the team was now ready to fly to London. Emmanuel and the team flew to London to meet with Nelson. To build their credibility and illusion even more, they sent a limousine to pick up Nelson from the airport. He was also accommodated with a luxurious 5-star hotel suite. Compliments of the governor of the central bank. As the meeting commenced, each member introduced themselves in the role that they rehearsed. Each showed charm, confidence and charisma. And Nelson believed every word that they were telling him. Emmanuel again made it clear that they wished to keep the project completely confidential, for construction wouldn't begin for another 4 to 5 years. Nelson told him that the bank would be ready to transfer the funds whenever they were ready to actually start the project. But Emmanuel was a smooth talker. He told Nelson that they had to have the funds immediately, for they had a lot of planning to do, such as hiring companies and gathering all of the tools and materials. So money had to start flowing immediately, so they could get the project started. Nelson was a bit nervous and began to doubt himself. Emmanuel picked up on this quickly and told him not to worry if he wasn't comfortable, for they already had numerous investors waiting. So the project would be completed regardless. This made Nelson feel like he was going to miss out on a big investment opportunity. He said that even if he agreed, his bank's management wasn't going to approve. Emmanuel once again told him not to worry, and that they could just go to their other investors. But he would offer Nelson a $10 million commission if he resolved the issue himself. That commission was the cherry on top for Nelson. So he agreed to the deal, and they shook hands for an investment of $242 million for the new airport. Today, that would be around $413 million. Before concluding their meeting, Emmanuel used his persuasion to convince Nelson to transfer them a $3 million deposit as proof of his commitment to the project. Nelson was now in the palm of their hands. Over the next 3 years, from 1995 to 1998, Nelson transferred $242 million to Emmanuel and his accomplices. To cover their tracks, they spread the transfers across 17 banks in different countries, with none of the bank's management catching wind of the fraud. The team was full of highly intelligent individuals, so instead of just spending the money on fancy cars, yachts and mansions, they all invested their money into real estate in Nigeria and various regions worldwide. They also bought shares in multiple companies. Emmanuel and the team would send fake documents and contracts of the different businesses that they were acquiring for the airport to Nelson so that they wouldn't raise suspicion. The team had officially gotten away with the heist of the century, but soon, their empire of deception was about to crumble. In 1998, a man named Jamie Lopez, one of the directors at Banco Narost, found himself extremely frustrated. His bank was being acquired by the largest bank in Spain for a massive $500 million. He had an important role to play in this deal, but he lacked crucial information. He couldn't find out where a third of the bank's capital had gone. It seemed to have vanished into thin air, and it all pointed to one man who would have the answers, Nelson Sakaguchi. Nelson was summoned by the board of directors to explain where the money had gone. Nelson kept stalling, and Jamie was fed up, so he confronted Nelson, grabbed him by the collar, and demanded the last 3 years of documentation for their international operations. Nelson confessed and said, "You know, I've always had gambling in my blood," and he then shared the details of the $242 million investment deal that he hid behind all of their backs. The board was enraged, and this marked the beginning of an international investigation into the third largest banking fraud in history. The investigation traced everything back to Nigeria, but Nigerian banks refused to cooperate. This was because behind the scenes, Emmanuel and the team had been secretly bribing banks and officials. Eventually, however, the Nigerian banks received pressure from Western banks and they were forced to cooperate. They revealed the identities of all of the account holders, and Emmanuel and his group were exposed. However, Nigeria had a huge lack of financial fraud laws, so the team actually remained free. Meanwhile, Nelson was arrested and charged with money laundering and sentenced to prison for several years. The owners of the bank, however, were furious that their money was gone, so they tried to find ways to recover some of the lost funds. But since almost all of the money was in real estate and investments, they couldn't recover anything. 0321 It seemed as if all hope was lost for the Brazilian bank. However, a new president took over Nigeria, and 4 years later, he established a Financial Crimes Commission in 2003, in which they heavily pursued Emmanuel and his team, leading to their investigation, and then arrests in 2004. 0342 5 of them were arrested, but remember, they started with a team of 6. What happened to the 6th one? Well, it turns out that the 6th member mysteriously died in a car crash during the investigation. 0357 Was it just a coincidence? Many speculate that Emmanuel had them assassinated to keep them from exposing the team. No one knows for sure. The trial began, but Emmanuel wasn't going to just give up so easily, so he started bribing officials and members of the jury. And it got so bad that the judge had to stop the trial and transfer it to another city, because most of the jury had been bribed. Emmanuel then tried to bribe the new officials and jury of that city. However, this time, it didn't work. But Emmanuel was persistent and never let anything stop him before, so he hatched an escape plan. He arranged for a warning to be sent to the courtroom during the trial. That warning was that a bomb was going to explode at any moment in the courtroom. Everyone evacuated quickly, and the trial was postponed and delayed until the courtroom was completely examined and cleared. They discovered that there wasn't any bomb, and the threat was gone. And the threat was completely fake. Emmanuel's plan to escape had failed, so instead he tried to negotiate a reduced sentence. In exchange for returning some of the stolen funds, he offered to return 10 million of the 242 that they had stolen. 18 The officials laughed in his face and said they wouldn't accept less than 80 million, but Emmanuel didn't want to give up that much money. Unfortunately for him, that was going to change very quickly, because during his trial they called a witness to the stand. It was his good friend Nelson. He explained in great detail how Emmanuel and the team impersonated the high officials and tricked him into the deal. Emmanuel knew he was screwed, so he agreed to pay 120 million of the stolen money and a $10 million fine to the Nigerian government. He was then sentenced to 25 years. You didn't really think that was it, did you? If you've learned anything this far, it's that Emmanuel always has a trick up his sleeve. He was actually able to bribe his way to spending less than 2 years in prison. 112 He then went on to recover nearly $50 million from his real estate properties. Not bad for pulling off one of the biggest heists in history. Emmanuel then decided to lay low for a while and just enjoy his life of luxury. But fast forward to 2016, and Emmanuel would find himself being charged with murder. Apparently he got into a land dispute with a neighboring town, and he sent over 200 people to attack the people in the town of Ukpo. This resulted in the shooting of police officers and the murder of a security guard. And as of right now, he is currently in custody and awaiting trial. But knowing Emmanuel, it's only a matter of time before he uses his bag of tricks to escape once again. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. I have tons more of entertaining videos on the way. Are there similar stories to this that you know? Let us know.